First, let's create a new canvas. I'll pick the screen size. I'll scale it down just a little bit and I'll add a photo of my reference image. I found a reference image on Instagram that I really wanted to recreate, so here I'm just putting it in my canvas. I want to get rid of those black edges, so I just select the part that I want to use, and then I'll go to the layers panel, I'll press the image and I'll press mask. Then I'll just combine those layers. That looks great, so I'll scale it up a bit just so I can see the details more easily. Now I'll pick the brush tool and I'll choose the technical pen. So this technical pen tool is great for creating sketches. So here I'm just creating some vertical straight lines. And actually I'm gonna delete that third one because I'm gonna duplicate the first layer and I'll move it just so the spaces between them are equal. To move the selection, I'm just tapping to the left or to the right of the selection to get it exactly where it belongs. Then I'm merging those layers together and I'm duplicating again. And here I'm just duplicating those lines once again, just so I have plenty of lines to create my design with. Then I'm just selecting and erasing the lines that I don't need for my design. I make sure that all my lines are on the same layer so that I can scale it according to my wishes. That looks about right. I then created a new layer on top of my sketch layer and I selected the area that I want to color in. I'm using the color picker to grab a base color for my rectangle. I'll just pick it from right about here. I'll then create a new layer underneath my sketch layer and I'll fill it in with the color that I just picked. I did feel like the color was a bit too dark, so I just selected some different colors to get the color that I wanted. And now I have to create a new layer and I have to select the parts of the wood that have a different color. So I'm just selecting the first one, the third one, the fifth one, etc. And here I'm just refining my selection a little bit by zooming in, but that should be pretty good. Make sure to create a new layer and then pick the color that you want to use for the lighter part of the wood and just color that in with a big brush. We'll then open up the layers panel and create a new layer on top of the base. We pick a black color and then we'll double tap the soft airbrush from the brush menu to edit the flow in the rendering tab. And we'll then create the shadows like so. What I like to do is I like to duplicate this layer and just move over these shadows to the right so I don't have to draw all of them by hand. And then I'll just create the last shadow by hand. Just make sure to merge all those layers together so we can move them and manipulate them simultaneously. As you can see, these lines are going out of the area that we want, so we can actually turn it into a clipping mask like so. Now that looks much better already. We'll now create a new layer on top of the lighter colors and we'll select a white color. We then pick the soft blend brush from the brush panel and we start creating diagonal strokes to create the effect of a reflection. To make sure this reflection is only affecting the lighter parts of the wood, we have to turn it into a clipping mask. I do feel like the reflection is a bit too harsh, so I'll go into the layers panel and I'll turn down the opacity on the shine layer. I want to change the color of the shadows a bit, so I press the little N next to the layer and I change the blending mode to get the color effect that I want. And I think I like multiply here. I'll then open up the layers panel again and I'll select my base layer. Make sure to also select the shadows on top of your base layer, and then you can resize this layer with the freeform function to create a 3D effect. I'll now pick a bit of a darker color. I'll edit my soft brush a bit just to get the correct size. I'll now create a layer on top of my base layer. I'll clip this mask onto my base layer. Then I just start drawing over the base layer on the top and on the bottom in the same kind of direction as the shine layer to create a nice gradient on top of the base layer. I want to turn down the opacity a little bit of the layer I just created, and I'll see how that looks. I'm quite happy with how that turned out already. I want to add a new layer to create some hard shadows on the wood. I'll use a soft airbrush and I'll make the brush size quite small to create the effect that I want. I increase the flow on my brush just so it would become a bit more intense. Then I start creating some hard shadows on the left sides of the lighter parts of the wood. To create the highlights the same way, just select a white color and create lines on the right sides of the wood. When that's done, I'll duplicate that layer I just created. I'll select the one on the bottom. Now go to Effects, Gaussian Blur. Now by swiping from the left to the right with your finger, you can increase the Gaussian Blur effect. I want to play around with the blending mode of this layer, and I like how overlay looks. I feel like the base layer has some shadows that are a bit too dark, so I'll just select that layer and I'll change the blending mode to overlay. Now I'm happy with how that turned out, so I'll just select all my layers and I'll group them so I can actually scale this to the size that I want it to be. Now for the finishing touch, we'll create a new layer below our group layer. We'll create a rectangle with the selection tool, fill it in with a black color, then we'll go to the effects panel and we'll pick Gaussian Blur. This will create a drop shadow behind our object. I think I'm happy with how that looks. This makes my project complete. I'm hoping you liked it and you learned from it. Let me know what you think and if you have any questions. Thanks for watching. I hope you had as much fun as I did. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you found this video helpful and want to see more content like this. Also, please let me know how I can improve this video and let me know if you have any questions. I'd be glad to explain it to you in more detail.